Yesterday is gone, so you only have the day. You wanna throw in the towel, you wanna low on your face. Seem like it's too much, you wanna walk away. But you gotta keep going, you gotta fight another day. You gotta keep on going.
Can't stop here.
You gotta keep on going.
Try your tears.
You gotta keep on going. You gotta keep going.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Keep Going, the podcast where we're trying to change your mind frame, your perspective, to hopefully change your direction in life. We got a special guest on today, a very, very special guest, somebody that I came across on Instagram, and she doing her thing. She doing big things. She got a podcast, Season Dialogue. You can find her doing her thing on there, and many people are following her. I mean, her following's going up like crazy. I mean, you can't miss her content. It's lovely. It's wonderful. It sounds like it should be like on an app somewhere. But welcome, Lisa Marie. Thank you for coming on today. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good. How about you? How you doing?
I'm lovely. I
Good.
appreciate you coming on today. I got a real quick story. I like to tell people about how I came across their content.
hmm
And my sister-in-law posted your content on her
Wow.
on IG. She shared it. And I was like, who is this? So I went to your content. And the way that you did it, I loved it because I like listening to like some of these apps, like the Calm app, where you can like
Mhm.
listen to somebody and calm you down, guided meditation.
Mhm.
And I was like, she sounded like she should be on the app or something. Like I love it. I love it. I let my wife listen to it, and she was like, "Now that's somebody I can listen
Oh, I
to."
love it.
So
Oh,
I definitely appreciate it. Everything that you're doing. I mean, I see. I had a few of your fans on IG just was like, I
wow.
think I shared one of your things, and they was like, "Yeah, isn't she lovely? Isn't she amazing?"
Oh,
So
I
I
love it.
definitely appreciate everything you're doing. There's a lot of people out there that definitely appreciate you. But for the people that maybe on here that don't know you, that this may be their first time, I just want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Who is Lisa Marie?
Oh my goodness, Lisa Marie. She is a mother. She's a wife. She's a photographer. She's now a podcast host.
Right.
And Lisa Marie is working towards her degree in clinical mental health. I have about a year
Wow.
to go, so I'll be. That has been a dream for about, I'll say, 5 or 6 years to just operate in that space, mainly because I see the decline in mental health assistance for us.
Right.
So
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to bridge that gap, and that's who I am.
Nice. I think that's wonderful. I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. What made you get into this? Like what you doing now? How long you been doing it?
Oh my goodness, January.
You mean this January? Oh my goodness. So you just started this January.
I started my podcast, my audio podcast, the end of November, and
Okay.
um, you know, listen, sometimes people speak things into you. So I had a listener who listened to me on my audio podcast, and she reached out to me via my personal Instagram page just to let me know that she was listening. And I would
Mm-hmm.
put kind of like the motivational videos on my personal page. And she was like, I don't know. I just feel like God is telling me make another page because the people who need to see it are not going to see it. And so she
Mm-hmm.
literally stayed on me for about 2 weeks to create that page. She said, just name it after your podcast. And so when I did, I didn't post videos as often. And she was like, go ahead. I mean, she was like that distant cheerleader. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right,
So
right.
she was like, post the videos. And they just did what they did. I think, I say this often that we all have the same lived experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
so it
Mm-hmm.
may resonate with, a lot of people. So, and there it
So
is
basically you started posting the videos in January.
in January.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Would you say before you started posting the videos there was a little um like fight back in you to like you was kind of scared to do it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
See,
Because,
I love that.
people see you one way, and
Exactly.
it's, But you know, the message and what she was telling me is something that I understood afterwards, was the fact that, you know, as much as we love the people that we are connected to, it is true that sometimes they can stifle our voices. And so I'm glad that she gave me that message, because for me, it wasn't, um, and I'm sure, you know, the same thing for you. It's just an authentic way of divulging and opening up and speaking. But when you do it, you're not doing it for a reach. For me,
Right.
it's just getting it out. You know, I write. I've always, you know, been a writer, and so it was just, and I love spoken word poetry. So
Yeah,
let's
I
just
can see.
get that out and implement it. And so,
Right.
you know,
I,
hmm
I I love that because it's a lot of people, and I know some of them will be listening to this podcast, and I know that they're scared. They're scared
hmm
to give it a try. You know, it's holding them back. And I tell many people that was me. You know, that was me. I had that same experience. I was different from you. I never, I started from my personal page, and I never tried another page.
wow.
I remember telling my boy, I was like, I'm just gonna start it. I
Yeah.
had about 250 followers just from my friends, the people I know, and I was like,
Mm,
I'm just gonna start it. If they don't like it, they'll unfollow me. Big deal.
right. That's
And
right.
so I was like, I just started, and I remember it was one person. They was like, man, I don't know if you need to hear this, but you're doing a really good job. And
Wow.
it told me, I remember him telling me, I just want you to know I was here before you hit your first 1,000 followers. They
Wow.
told me that. And it was crazy because sometimes you have that feeling of like, are they just talking, or like, is this real? You know, I got a friend that always say, he used to always say to me, I pray the day that you see yourself the way that I see you.
Wow.
And I just thought that was so powerful, because what if we see ourselves the way others see us? Because
Mm,
sometimes we can be hard on ourselves.
that's
But
right.
I mean, you started, you said, screw it, I'm just gonna give it a shot. And I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. I just, every time you post content, I gotta go watch it. And then you might not watch your numbers, but I watch them. I'm like, look at her now, look at her doing her thing. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I
Wow.
love it. I love it. I love it.
I love what
Definitely
you
keep doing
said.
your thing.
I love what you said. You know, when people come to you and they see something in you, again, we are our own worst critic. So we're
Right,
gonna articulate everything, and we're gonna, you know, oh, this ain't right. But it is the power of someone seeing something outside of you that kind of
right.
does give you that leverage to say, okay, let me step out and do this.
Right, right. And I love when you say this, and it's kind of gonna go on the topic today, because I want to talk
Mhm.
about building and maintaining relationships. Speaking
Mm,
of relationships, how we're talking, even the people we just got done talking about, these is the type of people that everybody desire to have in their lives, people that's who's gonna uplift you, uh,
mhm,
do those type of things. Because when you're dealing with different people, not everybody is the same. You have people who's very toxic. You have people who don't want to see the best in you.
mhm,
But what are three traits? What do you say is three traits that create a positive relationship?
mm. Number one, a trustworthy person. For me, that's essential. Number two, a transparent person.
Mm,
Where we come to, you know, an agreement, whether it's, you know, in a friendship or a relationship, where transparency is a thing that's fluid, and
mhm.
we don't have to put on for nobody. You know, you're being transparent, and then having someone who is supportive and really supportive. You know, for me,
Very.
trust, transparency, and, you know, being supportive is essential for me.
I love that you said that. It's funny because I'm huge on transparency. Like
Hmm.
I love a transparent relationship where we can just be real with each other.
Yes.
And I thought that was wonderful when you I think it was under a video or something you posted, and you was like, you love that I'm real and I'm raw.
Yes.
And when I came into this, like I was talking to my boy, and I was like, I can only be one way, and I have to be
Mhm.
myself. I can't change. I can't be nobody else. I have to be me, because if I'm not being myself, then it won't last long, because
Yes.
it won't be real,
Hmm.
or it might last, and I might create an audience that I never wanted nothing to do with, because it was never me in the first place, and I got to continue to try to be somebody else.
That's
So
right.
I love that you said that. Transparent. I love it. Trustworthy. Definitely
Mhm.
want somebody who's trustworthy in our lives. I think that's beautiful because I think I received a call this morning from a friend of mine that I met also doing his own motivation,
Wow.
and we had a talk about relationships
Mhm.
and keeping the right type of people around us,
Hmm.
because I think I see so much. As a matter of fact, I think the video, I didn't drop it yet, but the video that I'm dropping today is talking about, everybody say somebody is a friend. We all have friends,
Mhm.
but I think sometimes that what we consider friend might not always be a friend, but we might be a place in our life where we might benefit from that person. And I will use a story for me. I remember when I had a direction in my life where I made a change and I started following after God. And
Mm.
I came from a life that was not so godly, one of not doing the right thing. And I
Mhm.
remember when I told my friends that, hey, this is not how I want to live no more. I want to live for God. And immediately like, what are you talking about living for God? You
Mm.
know, and that taught me so much though. Then we was never really friends. It's just that where we was at in life, we benefited from each other.
Mhm.
We benefited from, because I've seen people who are friends, they go separate ways and they never stop staying in contact. They still stay in contact.
Yes.
So I think that's wonderful with what you said, honestly. And I hope that people can see that, like what a trustworthy, a person that's trustworthy, a person that is there for you, somebody
Mhm.
you can count on.
Absolutely.
That people see that. So I think that's amazing.
Mm.
But with saying that though, like, how do you think we can handle toxic relationships? The people, sometimes it's not always easy to cut people off
It's not.
at all.
It's not.
That is not easy.
It's not. Oh my
Nobody
goodness.
talks about that. That is not easy.
Oh, listen, but even with saying that, and I say from my position as a woman and just myself, I have given in friendships that were very toxic, and even in connections with family members that were very toxic. We always give grace and extend grace to them based
Mhm.
on what we know about them. So for family members, you got a toxic auntie. Well, that's just how she is, and you just kind of maneuver around, or a toxic friend. You may know some things that has happened before you that may have caused that person to be that way. And so you give that grace and that space, but it also creates a relationship where you kind of don't want to come around that person anymore because they're
Right.
bringing down your
Mhm.
energy. So it's been many times with friends we have a heart to heart, and for some you can't have it. Some people are reluctant, they don't want to hear about themselves. But what I've learned, from my personal perspective, is that I want to create a space around my life and people where they understand I'm not with all of that. I'm
Right.
not easy to drop you off because I'll work with you. But after we
Mhm.
keep having conversations over and over, and we talking it through, and nothing about the way in which they show up is a minor change, even in the little bit, it's like you kind of have to separate yourself. Like, I love you,
Right.
but we can't dwell in the same spaces. So,
Mhm.
I always think it's best to not cut people off. Like, I can't take this and I'm walking away. I always think
Mhm.
communication is the best way. At least you planted the seed, in their heart and in their head of understanding that there was a conversation that took place, and whatever they do with it is up to them.
Right. I love it.
Hmm.
I love it. And then I learned in some situations, yeah, like you said, you can't cut people off. And some
Hmm.
some situations is pretty much impossible. Now I'll give
Yes.
an example. Um, I talked about it a lot on my podcast. People hear it about a lot, but I talk about my upbringing and me having to go to foster care and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And my parents, I still talk to. I love my parents today, but we had a rough relationship growing up.
Hmm.
And I remember a situation where when I finally got grown and I had my own house and stuff like that, my parents wanted to move in. At first, I thought, nothing about it. Okay, cool. My wife okayed it. Okay, fine. They can help with the bills. It'd be perfect. And months later, I started to notice like mentally
Mm,
everything going downhill for me.
mm,
And it was my wife that first noticed it. And she was like, "Hey, I don't think they can stay here no more. I see what it's doing to you." And I
wow.
didn't realize because of the trauma with my parents in my past that they was a trigger in my life. I had to start seeing a therapist, and I started to open my mind, becoming open and seeing some things. And I
Mhm.
was like, man, like I love them, but
Mhm.
them staying under the same roof as me, seeing
Mm,
them every day and have to revisit that pain just wasn't going to work. And
mm,
I had to come to a tough place where I realized this is not a relationship I would want to cut off, or I
yes.
could cut off, but I would have to love them on a basis where I can go see them. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. How y'all doing?
Mhm.
So I love that you said that, because I do think it's tough at times where cutting off a relationship is not necessarily something that you can do.
That's
But
right.
I think that's good. But
Wow.
I I never knew that, people close to you can be such a trigger in those type of things,
I think it's
but
because I think it's because of the closeness, the proximity. The closer people
mhm,
are to us,
you're right.
um, the harder it is because again, we extend so much grace because we love them so much. And even thinking about like with your parents, I'm sure there were moments when you was just like, I don't know how to handle this. These are my
Mhm,
parents. You know, like how
exactly,
do I I revere
exactly,
them, you know, regardless of what, but you know, we all at a certain point we get to a stage of realization where we have to make some decisions, you know, and
right.
it may offend the other person, but it's all in love too, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And anybody who might be watching or listening, they might have a question of, well, how was you able to, get your parents to move out without it being, and I mean, I think it worked out for me. It was all God, but I was just going to have a conversation with my mom and just like, you know, like I would honestly, I was trying to look for the best way. Like, I think, y'all, it's just time we're going to help y'all find a place. But
Mhm.
what happened was my wife became pregnant with my son.
Ooh,
So then,
divine timing.
right, right. So then I never forget. I went up to my mom and I was like, "Hey, mom, I got to really talk to you." And I was like, "Hey, I know y'all have been enjoying staying here." And she stopped me. She's like, "Hey, we got to leave, right? Because your son on the way, he gonna need that room." I said, "Yep, mm-hmm."
Aw, so it took the ease off of it.
Oh man, so easy, so easy, so
Wow.
easy.
Wow.
And like I just left my mom's house, so it's not like it's one of those relationships where I try to stay distant, but it's
Right.
just I get to do it on my own terms. So
Mm.
everything is much better that way. But with that being said, I think sometimes it's hard to realize that you're in a toxic relationship. Like,
Mm.
not everybody even realize they're in one. So how do we even know that we're in a toxic relationship?
When number one, I feel like when you're walking around and walking on eggshells, when you
Mm,
constantly feel depleted, where nothing that you are doing seems to matter, where anything simple becomes an argument. You know, I mean, oh goodness, where your honesty feels like nagging to another
mm,
person. You
mm.
know, oh, it's so many. When you're no longer happy.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Wow. So it's almost like, in a sense, you can't even be yourself in a way.
Yes,
I love it. Like,
yes,
you're trying so hard just to be somebody else to make this individual
yes,
happy, and in
yes.
reality, they probably still wouldn't be happy with you.
No.
And I think I just got done hearing, it's funny you say that. I think I just got done hearing something about this on a podcast. I can't remember the podcast, but it was a
Mhm.
relationship, and the woman had to break up with her man. She had to get away, like he was abusive and everything else. But she said she had to come to a point where she realized first that it was toxic. Like, she
Mm,
didn't even notice it at first. She thought it was normal. And I think what also hurts is you might grow up like that. You
yes.
might grow up seeing these things and it becomes normal. And that's scary.
It is scary.
That's that's terrifying.
It is
And
scary.
so man, so what do you think? Like, because I'm hearing all of this, and I'm like, it almost sounds like it starts with self in a
Yes,
way.
it does. It absolutely does. And it's, just like you said, a lot of people don't know what toxic is. They may have been in a family dynamic with parents where they seen the norm was seeing their parents argue and cuss at each other,
Mm-hmm.
and that is but they stayed together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they get into a relationship, and, whether it's a man or a woman, and the dynamic of their relationship is that they're arguing, cussing, and the same thing. But in their head, it's like, what I seen, my parents are still together. It must not
Right.
be that bad. So,
Right.
not acknowledging and understanding that that relationship is toxic. Another thing is, and I always say this, like, I know in anger, sometimes people just flip off at the mouth and they
Mm-hmm.
say things, but we have to be cognizant of the way that people act in anger and the things that they say in anger that cut below the belt. That is toxic. No one deserves anything below the belt.
Right.
You can
Right.
speak your truth in arguments and disagreements, but when your argument becomes trying to belittle someone and make them feel low, that
Mm-hmm.
person's toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
That's good. That's good. What is two things you think we can do as individuals to, I guess, build better relationships with ourselves first
Mm.
and foremost?
Number one, get to a place where you honestly love yourself. We can
Mm,
speak on loving ourselves, as much as possible, but do you really love yourself? Because when you love yourself, you honor yourself so much that you don't allow people to make you feel inferior.
mm-hmm.
And the other thing is just self love. And I would say, when you are met with a toxic situation or relationship, speaking up for yourself. I think the
Mm,
moment that we don't speak up for ourselves, we allow people to continue being the way that they are. If you kind of nip it in the bud right then and there, that's not what we do.
that's good.
You are forming in that person's mind, oh, I can't be that way with that person.
Right.
You may change the trajectory and the behavior of a person who's never been told no from the onset. So, you know, we have
Right.
to be accountable for ourselves and speak
Yeah.
up.
I love that you said that self love. I think people really need to focus on that and make sure that they know what that is,
Yes.
because I can transparently say that I'm 32,
Mm,
and I probably truly grasped what self love was maybe 2 years ago.
wow.
You
It's a
know, just yeah, yeah, thinking I love myself, but if I'm doing things to hurt myself in any way, then
Mhm.
I it's hard to say that I love myself.
Yes.
But truly getting to a place where it's like you don't need nobody else. You don't need the affirmations
Mm,
to make you love yourself. You know,
mm,
and I was talking to somebody this morning, and they was talking about how they're struggling because they was looking for the likes and the comments and all of that
oh,
to validate
mm,
their video being a good video. Then he was like, "But I love you. You just post your video, whether what the numbers is." And I said, I had to get to a point when I started doing this. My testimony was 2020. I was in a big depression in my life because I
mhm,
was 30 years old and I wasn't where I wanted to be in my life. But in
mm,
reality, what I got to a place of understanding was I never even loved myself or gave myself a chance to see where I should be in life. I never gave myself a chance to get over any other trauma, none of those type of things. I just wanted to rush life, and if I get here, this is successful, and once I'm
mhm.
successful, then everything gonna be okay. And
Yes.
no, like me giving me more money just giving me more access to stuff that makes me more depressed.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
had to I had to come to that realization that that's not money would not make me happy.
That's
No,
right.
that would materialistic things would not make me happy.
Mm,
But I had to really come to that place. And I tell the story that I used to always encourage myself in the mirror, like every morning,
mm.
just encourage myself.
Wow, you sound like me. I love it.
See? See, and my story is I felt God was telling me one day, instead of sitting there encouraging yourself in the mirror, why
Mm,
don't you take the social media and encourage
mm.
others while you encourage yourself?
Wow.
So I told him to remember why you do it and what you do it for, and stop looking at the comments. Me and my friend, we have like daily calls where we
Mhm,
encourage one another, and we got
mhm.
this thing called post and go. You just post on social network and you go. Don't
That's
care
right.
about the comments, the likes, none of
That's
that
right.
matters.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
Because you got one like, you changed one person's life. Wasn't it all? Was it that's
That's
what you
right.
do it for?
That's right.
So I get that when I'm listening to your stuff, I just love it because when I watch your stuff, it seems like something that's very genuine. Like,
Mm.
you just come off very, very genuine to me, and that's what I realized when I first seen it. And I was just, I just love this, and
Oh,
it seems like something that's going to continue to take off because you are so genuine.
thank you. I
So
appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah,
You got to tell. You got to tell sometimes when you're listening to something. I love that
Mhm,
you. Oh gosh, I love that you said that. I. Oh my goodness. Number one, I love that you said when your life began to change and you wanted to have a closer relationship with God. I don't think
mhm,
people understand that when you want that and you yearn for that and you're intentional about that walk with God, God will show you some things.
yeah,
And with you saying that, I always say this, right? We always have the knowledge before God, but it's like
mhm,
he turns it up like a million
right,
times. And
right,
when you speak of genuineness with the person, you can kind of tell flipping through certain things. Even if you're, on social media and you may hear someone speak about something,
right,
um, you know, based on discernment, where that is coming from. Whether it
mhm,
is a self fulfilling speech for themselves, just, for likes, or if it is really authentic from their soul. And
right,
I'll share that with you as well. Like, I, I don't know, Lambo, I don't know if I saw you first. Yes, I did. I was scrolling, and you know how social media works. They
right,
kind of the algorithm, once it clues into what kind of person you are, they'll put videos similar to yours. And I scrolled, and I can't remember what you were talking about. And I was scrolling, and I said, "Okay, let me listen." And I was
mhm,
like, "Wow, like there's power behind this voice." And then I began to listen some more, and there is this force that you have when you speak, but it's almost like speaking to the masses at a point in which I just need y'all to listen.
mhm,
Just take a moment to listen, and your verbiage and your stories are so spot on. Like, it's great to we can, speak positivity all day long.
right,
You
right,
really hit people when you are open and
mhm,
even relate to them. And so that's what caught me. I was like, yes, it's authentic when you can be transparent instead
right,
of, let's just speak positive words, let's
right, right,
it's
right.
a connection there. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you spoke about that relationship with God, because you can totally see it in what you hear and what you speak about.
Appreciate it. I thank you.
Mhm. You're
I thank
welcome.
you. So, real quick, a question like that I like to ask towards the end of the podcast, because people, I think people when they see us sometimes that they think that we got it all together.
Oof.
That every day we just make up motivated. We make these videos. We just always, but they
Yeah,
never know that we go through them same tests, them same trials, and that's why we're giving you these things.
that's
So,
right.
what is it that keeps Lisa Marie going?
I'll tell you what, 2020 must have been a poignant year for a lot of people. 2020, I lost my mother. And so that was like a downhill cycle. We did not have a good relationship at all. We tried to work through it.
Hmm.
And it got better before she passed away. But, sometimes you don't understand or comprehend some of the things that you carry until that person is gone. And so
Mm,
I went through a period of just like depression. I couldn't articulate these feelings because she was no longer here. I and my brother had a different type of relationship, so I couldn't really talk to him about it because he was mama's baby. You know what I'm saying? But during that transition, it's like you get this enlightenment because you recognize what it is that you are going through or may be suffering through. But there was just this aha moment that came out
mm,
of it. And I said, and this is during the time where I just continued to write. And I said, I just want to write these feelings down because they are authentic. And I know what it feels like to be hurt. And I know what it feels like to whatever.
right,
Sometimes we can't speak on things. Some people can, but you speak on things that you know.
right,
And that's
right.
when people can feel it.
I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. You now I have one more question, which from you for just you said, because I think it can bless many people. Because, like I said, I did go to foster care, and I did have me personally. I have a greater relationship with my parents now, but there was a time where there was a lot of hate and stuff like that, and that my wife had to help me get through things before she was my wife. But I've met individuals that, when it comes to their parents, like the thought of them, I don't
Mm,
even want to think about them. What would
mhm.
you say to an individual that might be struggling or not be in the place they are with their parents and stuff like that? What can you say to them that can help them? You know,
I'll say this because I had to take this in for myself. Parents we don't give them grace sometimes. They are people and they had to learn some things. And maybe at the time in which things were the way that they were, we kind of revere our parents as having to know everything. you know,
right?
they are liable to make mistakes. And maybe
Mhm.
in the mistakes that were made were during a time that we were children or we saw these mistakes and we took it as personal. But give parents grace. They are doing the best that they absolutely can. And I
I love
think most people won't understand it until they understand for themselves as parents, you know?
exactly, exactly.
Yes.
I love that you said that.
Mhm.
I love that you said that because I'm a parent myself, so
Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean. And my daughter,
absolutely.
she's 6, and I always say she's 6 going on 21 because the girl thinks she know everything.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
if I say something, she gonna question me on it. And you said this, but you said
Yes, that's
so.
right.
Uh, I love it, and it's something that you say, and I want to make sure people catch this in this podcast. But you use the word grace a lot, extending
Mhm.
grace, and I love that because I always say treat others the way you want to be treated. And we're
Ooh,
not perfect.
that's
We're
right.
not perfect at
That's
all. And
right.
to any relationships I have, please extend much
That's
grace.
that's right. We at least should have somewhat of grace,
Right.
to because again, some people don't know the way in which they operate. They just don't know. Like in our minds, it's like, how did you not get that? But some people don't
Hmm.
know until conversations happen and we extend that. So that's why I
Right.
always like give grace. Hmm.
Right. But
Yeah.
definitely, I thank you for coming on today. I really
Thank
appreciate you for
you.
coming on. To anybody that may want to follow you, that may just see you from this podcast, how can they find you?
Sure. So if you are on Instagram or TikTok, even on YouTube, I am Season Dialogue. I also have a podcast, Season Dialogue with Lisa Marie, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You'll find me there.
Thank you, thank you. So I hope y'all enjoyed the podcast today. And if you didn't take nothing else from this conversation today, extend grace.
That's right.
Extend grace. But thank you for coming on today, Lisa. I appreciate you. And
You.
until next time, peace.
Yesterday is gone, so you only have a day. You wanna throw in the towel, you wanna low on your face. Seem like it's too much, you wanna walk away. But you gotta keep going, you gotta fight another day.